Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Wednesday, November 20th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Indiana game is in 3 days. The game against Michigan in 10 days. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Ohio State offense, how they performed against Northwestern, and what that might mean heading into this weekend's game against the Hoosiers. We're going to be doing that with our buddy Ross Fulton, the X's and O's guru at BuckeyeHuddle.com. And when we have Ross on the show, we're sponsored by Jeff Ruby's of Columbus, proudly offering nationally acclaimed USDA prime steaks, seafood and sushi, impeccable service, live entertainment, and an attention to detail that is simply unmatched. Just go to jeffruby.com/Columbus today. All right, Ross, I think one of the things that I'm looking at in terms of this weekend's game against Indiana is how well can the Buckeyes run the ball against the Hoosiers? Because the Hoosiers have the number 2 rush defense in the nation in terms of yards per carry allowed. Ohio State actually number 3, just behind them. And so we're going to start with this one. Normally I'll tell you this is the play where this play happened. Ross, this was a fairly nondescript run play where Quinshon Judkins got tackled for basically no gain. So this is not going to be a lot of help for the people listening, but run us through this first one.
Yeah, so I did think Northwestern did some things early with slanting and studying their defensive line that caused some dead plays for Ohio State in the run game, or not unsuccessful ones. And so, this is like an example. There was a few of these where they like to slant towards the tight end. So I know this is from the behind the end zone view, but Ohio State is in a trips to the wide side of the field and the tight end to the boundary. Obviously, that is a typical formation that Ryan Day and Chip Kelly like to use to run the football to the often the short side. This run, in fact, goes to the wide side. But what Northwestern was doing was they were slanting towards the tight end side here. And basically, they had a few of these as like a mid zone where the guard, this is Carson Hinsman, but also this happened to Tegra Shabola as well. They kind of get stuck in no man's land. Like they have this, what I would consider, one technique like between the center and the left guard, right? And so I think Hinsman, what they want to try to do is like post, like get their backside arm on that guy to help the center overtake before working their way to the play side. But by jumping inside right away, like their steps are just not, he's chopping, he's not getting lateral at all. And Donovan Jackson doesn't get a hand on him either. As I said, this happened to the other side too. And so this guy, this defensive end is kind of in no man's land, and comes free. They bring then the guy off the edge that Jackson you see come into the screen and pick up. So as I said, they were doing a few things up front with games to stymie Ohio State's inside zone run game early. But the good news, as we'll get to here, is with the greater run game diversity that Chip Kelly has brought to Ohio State, it gives them more options to respond to what they're seeing early in the game. And so they were, pretty quickly able to adjust and have some success.
Yeah. So here's one. Next one is inside zone. We're going to have 2 RPO plays back to back. This first one, ball gets given to TreVeyon Henderson, and it is a nice game for the Buckeyes.
Yeah, and so one thing that they did was they took the tight end off the line of scrimmage and they put him in the backfield. And so this is, like a split back look. You can call it 20 personnel, even though it's a tight end. So you have 2 backs, no tight end, and 3 wide receivers now. My guess is that this helped solve some of the slanting issues or mess with Northwestern's keys. And then they kind of ran like an insert play. And so instead of like a split block, what they're trying to do is have the tight end block back, but he's sort of trying to sift through to get to the backside linebacker. So like that guy that was coming off the edge in the first clip, you can see here, like G. Scott, is going for that backside linebacker to pick him up. And then, you saw, again, like not a ton of wide receiver screen reliefs, like pre-snap. Instead, they were running quite a few of these RPOs. And so Will Howard here is reading the backside safety, and actually to the single wide receiver side. So you can see like Carnell Tate's running that glance route, right? And Howard's sort of turning his head. This is Tampa 2 here. Northwestern, and this gets to your point about Indiana, like Northwestern was a good warm-up for Indiana because like Indiana, Northwestern was doing a lot of disguising their coverages, coming up with a lot of different ways to get to this Tampa 2, we'll talk about here in a second, like non-traditional Tampa. I mean, this one's traditional, but like, where you're like, what the corner's one of the deep half players and you're sort of rotating guys around, but they mixed in cover 3, they mixed in some quarters. And so they were giving Ohio State a lot of different looks. And so, but Ohio State had a few of these where by, combining with the RPO, you can see like how long Will Howard sort of rides the ball to Henderson before giving. They were able to open up some things in the run game, keep the safeties out of the box. And with this sort of 2-back insert again, we're able to have some success similar to what they did against Penn State.
All right. Another play where they had some success, another RPO. This time, Will Howard pulls it. This ends up being the second touchdown reception. We're going a little out of order here because we're keeping the narrative of the show together. Going a little out of order here. This is the second Carnell Tate touchdown.
Yeah, so slightly different concept, right? But there was a few RPOs before on those inserts where like he gave. Here he finally pulls. This is actually a trip split zone. So here G. Scott is blocking back. But it's the same concept where Will Howard is reading here the second level defender. So that guy who's sort of, Emeka Egbuka is in the slot, sort of the overhang there outside the tackle, who comes down to play the run. Howard pulls. Now, actually, again, I was talking about like Northwestern changing things up in coverage. Here they have their linebacker, right? He like actually drops back as a deep middle player. And so the play is actually designed to go to Emeka Egbuka on that glance route. Like it's similar to the Carnell Tate, and by glance, I just mean like a kind of like a skinny slant, like a little bit deeper than a slant, but same concept. And so Howard resets himself here and then hits Tate on sort of this like in-breaking dig because, Emeka's pulling those safeties back. And so kind of a interesting concept where you're running the RPO, but you're giving yourself a few options here. As I said, like they were able to then sort of crack the code, find some success with this sort of insert split zone RPO game to negate some of the slanting and stunting up front that they were seeing.
All right. And the Buckeyes did not necessarily run the ball particularly well early in the game, but once they got rolling in the second half, they really got rolling. If you have rewatched the TV copy, the trigger to know, hey, they're about to start running the ball really well is when Jake Butt on the color commentary says, boy, they haven't run the ball well at all. And then immediately they rip off a bunch of 14 and 17-yard runs. This, I believe, was one of those. This is a really nice long game for Quinshon Judkins once the Buckeyes really had kind of started to crack that run game in the second half.
Yeah, I thought both Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson ran well in this game. They broke some plays in the hole. I thought Judkins was a little bit more patient than he had been the week before against Purdue. Putting aside probably the speed option where he tried to cut it outside and did not get the first down in the fourth quarter. You'd like need to stick your head up there and get that first down. And Carlos Laughlin let him know that on the sideline afterwards. But short of that, I thought they both guys were on point. And Ohio State, the other concept that I think they had a lot of success on repeatedly was outside or wide zone. Obviously, this was a Ryan Day staple for a long time. We've talked about repeatedly. Do not see it as much with Chip Kelly at Ohio State, but probably saw it more so in this game than we've seen in previous games. And so again, here they're going to run it again to the wide field, not to the boundary. It's a 12 personnel, so you see, G. Scott goes in motion. Really good job here by both Josh Fryer and Seth McLaughlin climbing to the second level and getting on linebackers. But again, like you can see Northwestern here slants back to the boundary. So that was right, the same concept that they were using to stop more of Ohio State's inside zone plays earlier. But now you're getting that lateral step from Tegra Shabola instead of trying to like post on that one-eye technique. And so he's then able to get to that slanting defensive end 41 who's coming into the picture. And again, mixing in, running it to the wide field. And so again, I just think that, Ryan Day's talked about this too. Like sometimes with the run game, it takes like a little while to crack exactly what's going on. But I do think they had quite a bit of success, as you said, like ripping off chunk plays once they got to concepts that were working against all the movement up front that Northwestern was using. And so again, I think that should augur well for Ohio State fans when they're, to the extent there's ever concern about the run game. Like, not everything's going to always be perfect, but I do think that they have more tools in the tool bag, right? And I do think that they, like just technique wise, you just see them doing a much better job on the offensive line, particularly like getting to the second level and getting to linebackers. I mean, Seth McLaughlin's been great at that all year, but really see good coordination here on the wide zone.
Well, one of the tools that Ohio State has had in its toolbox all season that they have used with increasing amounts of glee, I think, among the fan base is Jeremiah Smith. This next play is the longest gain of the game for him right at the start of the third quarter.
Yeah, and so as I said, like Nebraska is really mixing up coverages, right? And so here you see it, like, non-traditional Tampa in the sense like they're mugged up. And that just means like guys are coming from different areas, right? As opposed to like showing you cover 2 pre-snap. And so here the middle linebacker drops from up on the line of scrimmage to 20 yards back. And so Ohio State hit this play a couple times against this Tampa 2, like, because when you're dropping your mic, right, he's still like the middle player, like it's a 2 deep, 5 under. So he has that middle zone. And by Tampa, he's getting more depth to try to take away the throw that's like down the seam between the two cover 2 safeties, but that can open up the hole underneath him, right? So like he's working really hard to get depth here. And then they just hit this sort of like a levels or follow concept, like the inside receiver is running more of a deeper square in with the outside wide receiver running more of a shallow in. And, like lots of sending Emeka Egbuka in motion here, they do to take Jeremiah Smith and make him the inside slot receiver. And Will Howard just great throw underneath, between the levels of the defense, basically, right? They hit this also to Egbuka on that first like 3rd and 8 or 3rd and long conversion to get out of their own end zone on the second drive. Same concept. And so again, like, seeing answers just like increasingly, I was joking today, like there's just so much Tampa to being played now in college football. Like it's really kind of a sea change. So you see it from all different kinds of angles. Coach Koo on Twitter has a big breakdown of Indiana, showing them getting to Tampa 2 from a lot of different pre-snap structure. And so you have to be ready with your cover 2 beaters. Right. He also hit G. Scott down the seam against Tampa 2. Like the linebacker was carrying him down the hole. It was a great throw from Howard, great catch by Scott. And so, just increasingly you'll see these cover 2 concepts Ohio State's using, particularly on passing downs when you more apt to see a cover 2. And so again, those will be pretty important going forward, as particularly this week. And then obviously Jeremiah Smith, for as big and strong as he is, he's also pretty great with the ball after the catch. And so, see that again here, but he's certainly able to take, intermediate short range throws and turn them into big plays.
Next one up is not Jeremiah Smith. It's Carnell Tate, and this is going to be his first touchdown of the game, one where he took a long play and turned it into a long play and turned it into 6 points.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there was certainly an emphasis on trying to throw the ball vertically this game. Obviously, there's a lot of discussion of that post Purdue. I thought Howard, on this one, he does a really nice job, stepping into the throw. Sometimes we talked about how he can short step it a little bit. And then, you saw this concept as well. Again, so Northwestern's in a cover 4 here. Again, it's how much can you guess correctly what kind of coverage they're going to run. And so, but by that, they are basically bracketing Emeka Egbuka. You can see both the linebacker or nickel over Egbuka as well as the safety watching him. And so you're seeing a lot of, I think there's been some discussion at least of Emeka Egbuka as having a relatively minor role these past couple of weeks. I personally am seeing a lot of coverage roll to him or focus on him, which is obviously opening up other stuff. But that, so that's a fancy way to say by bracketing him, that leaves this corner and one-on-one coverage. And Carnell Tate uses the stop and go route. Nice protection. Nice throw here. The last thing I would offer, on this protection, you have TreVeyon Henderson sort of check spot, check for pass protection and then release, but a lot more 5-man protection this game that I think went pretty well. I thought Donovan Jackson in particular blocked well on the edge. Obviously, again, there's only so many Abdul Carters out there, but he seems to be getting more comfortable, I think. And, I know that Day talked last week, I believe, about they had him lose a few pounds to get more comfortable playing on the edge. And he seems to be settling in there. And so they, slide the protection away from him. He does a nice job to open up this route. So again, good call against the coverage. But again, looking forward, like you try to guess right, or try to give yourselves options against, because you're increasingly just seeing teams that are really mixing and matching things against Ohio State to try in the back end to try to slow them down, and that'll be pretty important to be correct on Saturday as well.
Well, and I do want to talk to you a little bit more about the offensive line, but we do have one more play to get to. This last one, this was 3rd and 2, and there's been a lot of talk about why were they throwing the ball downfield so much on 3rd and 2, and you have easier options, you have easier choices. So it felt to me, Ross, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but it felt to me like we've talked about breaking tendencies in the past, and maybe there were specific matchup things that they were seeing here that made them do this as well. But what was the deal with throwing the ball downfield? Because this next play was 3rd and 2, and it was an incomplete pass, so it took Ohio State to a 4th down. So it didn't always work. But what was the thought behind throwing the ball on some of these 3rd and 2 kind of plays?
Yeah, if you go back and look at like the game, like play by play, they really didn't start doing it until the 4th quarter, like on these short yardage. So it just lends me to believe that they're trying to break tendencies in short yardage using a game where they're in control. They don't want teams crowding the line of scrimmage. I think that there also was a bit of let's try to hit a Bucka, or another one. They go on 4th down, they roll out and try to throw it to Carnell Tate on a double move. I think they certainly were times when Northwestern was getting pretty nosy, but not really at the corner level. So I really just think to some extent it was getting things on tape. Now maybe they thought they'd get another similar coverage like to the one that they got from Carnell Tate on that touchdown, because it's a very similar concept, right? Like it's a stutter and go by Emeka Buka, like hard play action, but it's a 2-man route and it's against cover 3, right? So instead of like that corner having underneath responsibilities, he just has the deep third. And so he plays it correctly. He doesn't bite on the route. It's kind of a shame, as you said, it's 3rd and 2, like Emeka Buka's wide open on the hitch because the guy's giving him so much space. So like in terms of like that particular game, I would agree that some of those late short yardage, let's chuck it vertically calls were maybe didn't make the most sense in the moment. But that's why I tend to believe that it's trying to put things on film so that opponents can't expect either, run or underneath intermediate passing game in these sort of 3rd and 4th and short yardage looks. Because I do think they could have there's probably more efficient ways to pick those up. But I just have to think it's particularly when you're up 31-7 in the 4th quarter and you've moved the ball, just trying to put some things on film, as well as, hit Emeka Buka for a big play, as I said, because he has not been as involved the past 2 weeks just in terms of getting the football.
All right. And just to take a little bit of a look ahead at this weekend's game against Indiana, I feel like every week you could say, boy, I think the key is the offensive line. And that's kind of the catch-all, yeah, sure, that's the key every week kind of thing. But it feels like this week, boy, how does the Ohio State offensive line play against a pretty good Indiana defense? The Hoosiers have statistically been one of the best in the nation this year. They're 2nd nationally, allowing 2.46 yards per rush. They are 7th nationally in yards per attempt, 5.8. Ohio State is 3rd and 20th there. So Ohio State has had a very, very good season, but statistically just a touch behind Indiana. Of course, Indiana has not played the competition that Ohio State has, so there's a little bit of a caveat there as well. Indiana 1st in the Big Ten in sacks. How much of this weekend's game just boils simply down to, can Ohio State run the ball for 4 yards per carry, and can Ohio State give Will Howard time in the pocket? And if they can do both of those things, they probably win this game. Am I grossly oversimplifying things to say that?
I think it starts with identifying what Indiana's doing up front in the back end. As I said, a lot of disguise, a lot of showing single high pre-snap and dropping to cover 2 or vice versa. And so I think a lot of it comes down to like, can we get in the right play? Can Will Howard diagnose it well? Okay, maybe I will eat my words, but I personally think that if Ohio State's offensive line is in a situation where like they can identify what's going on correctly, I still think they have like the physical advantage versus Indiana in like a single block combo blocking situations. So I really think like a lot of it is like how good of a job can Indiana do disguising things that throws Ohio State off, both in the run game and on third down, versus, how well is Ohio State, from Chip Kelly to Will Howard to the offensive line, diagnosing what's going on and able to handle things. Because I do think you'll see some of that, stunting like we saw from Northwestern, moving around, as I said, bringing guys from different angles. And so I think a lot of it's going to be on the mental side of it before just, matching up physically.
Well, should be a very, very exciting and pretty impactful game for the Buckeyes and the Hoosiers this weekend, the third top 5 matchup of the season. It's getting boring, isn't it? It's just top 5 matchup after top 5 matchup over and over again this year. Boy, it is a real outlier of a year to have 3 games that big, Oregon, Penn State, and Indiana, all in the same regular season. And you could have Oregon again in just a couple weeks if things go well this weekend. And then you could have a bunch of other top 5 matchups coming up in December and January after that. So wouldn't this be a great time to become a member of BuckeyeHuddle.com to get access to our insider team of Tony, Kevin, and I covering the team, Mark covering recruiting, Ross, and our whole team of X's and O's gurus there, making you a smarter football fan, giving you the inside access that you crave in these very, very big moments, big weeks coming up in what could be a very memorable Ohio State football season. Right now, you get access to our whole team for just $4.99 for your first month. First month is going to obviously cover the Indiana game, the Michigan game, Big Ten championship game week, if applicable, and the college football playoff after that. So, man, it would be a great time to become a member there. And also, make sure you check out Jeff Ruby Steakhouse, a great place to celebrate a big Ohio State win. The award-winning upscale steakhouse in downtown Columbus, named one of the top 50 steakhouses in America by Food Network. Just go to jeffruby.com/Columbus, check out the menu, and make a reservation today. That will do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.